Hi, I'm Femi OK. You're watching the stream. Today's episode, birth control in China. And by that I mean the recent change in policy from two-child policy to a three-child policy. Birth rates are dropping in China. The number of elderly in the population is going up. Could allowing families to have up to 3 children with no penalties, could that be the solution? I'm asking you that question. If you're on YouTube, you can answer it and also post some questions to the guests. Be part of today's show. Hello, Victor. Hello, Ye. Hello, Igor. It's so nice to see you. Welcome to the stream. Victor, introduce yourself to our global audience. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Victor Teo. I'm a political scientist, currently working as a visiting scholar at the University of Cambridge Center for Research in Arts, Social Sciences and Humanities.
Nice to have you. Hello, Ye. Introduce yourself to the stream audience, please.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ye Liu. I'm a Senior Lecturer in International Development. I work at King's College London, UK.
And welcome back to the stream, Igor. The last time Igor was on, we were talking about a change to a two-child policy, and now we've added an extra kid. So lovely to have you back, Igor. Igor, remind our audience who you are and what you do.
Hi, friends over the world. I'm Igor Dong. I'm right now an assistant professor of sociology and global gender studies at the State University of New York, Buffalo. And I work on gender, care work, and social reproduction in China.
Guess I'm really curious about your reaction when you heard about this new child policy. Igor, you start.
Right. Time really flies fast because last time I was interviewed about the two-child policy 5 years ago. And as I vaguely recall, I made 2 points. One is it's not going to work. Second, the policy of one child should not be in the first place. Because this kind of population engineering is really not the way to go. You should really let people to make decisions, and that will actually work better if you really want to fix the population aging problem. And I was right?
Yeah, you're right. Congratulations for being right. Thank you for coming back and reminding us about that. Yeah, let me show you this. This is a Weibo poll. It didn't stay online for very long because the answers weren't very appreciated. Are you ready for the three-child policy? People in Weibo were asked. All set, can't wait, 1,233 response. It's on the agenda, less. Hesitating, many problems await consideration. Okay, not quite ready for the bigger family yet. Completely out of the question, 24,000 votes. Shocked or not shocked, Ye?
Not at all. I think the three-child policy if a three-child policy works, it means it works to have this comic effect. Which means Chinese citizens are making lightly, not taking the birth control policy seriously anymore. If we say two-child policy had any credibility of kind of bringing this nostalgic past of big family, and three-child policy is a joke.
I'm going to show you this chart, and Victor, for our audience as well. So we're looking, the orange columns here, through the years, 1950 to 2020. This is how the population in China has grown and is growing. And then the red line here, the birth rate, between the 60s and the 70s, it went up, and then lower and lower and lower and lower. Victor, that's the graph, that's the stats, that's the dry bit. What does that mean in reality in China? What could you see right now where you could see, the population is declining, or the birth rate in particular is declining?
Well, what I can see is that China is going through the experience that is kind of common in East Asia. It compares, China will have a relatively similar experience in its demographics vis-a-vis South Korea and Japan. So today in China, if I'm not wrong, the average birth rate is about 1.7, 1.8. But in South Korea, it's 1.1, 1.2, and in Japan, it's around 1.4. So as the countries modernizes, and the cost of living increases, you will see there's a natural tendency for the people in the in the country to have smaller and smaller families because of the cost of living or the stresses of modern life, etc. So this is something that we should expect, and it's not something that is very surprising, really.
One of the
And I also
yes, go ahead, Ego. Yeah,
I just want to add one more point on Victor's point. That is, it's definitely the number one driving factor to slower down the population growth is actually modernization, industrialization. People have better life quality and decide to have fewer children. But in China, one more historical factor is that during the late 70s, the 80s, the state miscalculated how fast the population would grow. And so they implemented this historically most restrictive policy, which is the one child, which is unnecessary because you were right. Actually, as industrialization took place, people would actually have reduce the number of children they produce regardless of what the state told them to do. But now, because the state enforced so much things on people's mind, people will be even less cooperative and more resistant because they are so cynical and fed up with what the state has to tell them to do.
Yi, let me show you this. It's an ad from China's one-child policy era. It's almost the opposite of where we are right now. If you have one child, you are prosperous. 2 children, well, that's pretty stressful. 3 children, terrifying. Look at the dad. The dad can't even look the same way as the kids and the mum. That was the advert to say, have one child. One child is going to be better for you. You're going to be rich. You're going to do well. And now, what is the argument for saying you should have 3 children? How can you go from prosperous to terrifying and tell China's families and people who may be having kids that the terrifying is now a good idea?
I completely agree with Igor's point. I think the Chinese government miscalculated its audience. So now let's talk about who these families are. So these families, particularly women, men, they were children of the one-child policy. So different from the modernization perspective, this one-child generation, children of the one-child generation had more education than before, particularly for women. Can you hear me? Particularly for women, they had really high, more education than previous generation, than previous women. This kind of a very important factor need to be considered. When women had more education, they're more likely to take part in professional jobs. So it's a completely different kind of expectations. And also we need to ask why Chinese family want to have more children in the past, and why the Communist Party misplayed the card of big family. So traditionally speaking, Chinese family want big family particularly for boys, for old age security and for old age care. And having a boys had much higher rates of returns. But when we kind of flip the norm, having more children actually become an economic liability for individual families. Cannot guarantee economic return. The cost of education, cost of childcare is so high. And, modern families, individual families do not rely on their children to provide old age care. So this kind of what we call a cultural lag between, the big family, nostalgic big family norm and contemporary, anxiety among younger families,
sure,
among, urban families. So there's a kind of big lag between norms and reality.
I want to bring in another thought, guest, and this is from Jazeera Chan. And I'm wondering what happens if you've had decades and decades of being told that one child or maybe even 2 children is the limit. And in your head, that is what you're told. So Jazeera was a second child at a time when you weren't allowed to have a second child without paying a penalty. And her mum hid her. She was a secret child. Have a listen to her experience. And then, Iga, I'd love you to come off the back of Jazeera's story.
Because I'm the second child in my family, my mom was super hard at that time when she was pregnant with me. She escaped so many times when the inspector came. She has hidden in the mountain, bamboo forest, even on the roof. Her anxiety would definitely influence the baby. So I am the person who is easily anxious. Under the one-child policy atmosphere, people would think that one child is normal, but the other children are superflowers. That kind of value has also influenced me. So the three-child policy has attracted a lot of criticism.
Yeah, I think both what Jitney and Ye talked about is quite true. And I think what really happened in the 80s are three different things. Number one is the direct cost of this harsh policy, as what you just heard about, is so cruel. And the women suffer from both either losing their babies and going under the forced surgery of abortion, or having a second child born with a lot of social punishment and stigma. Second, what happened is, in order to implement this, to sell this idea to the population, the state started a campaign to tell everybody that having fewer children not only means that it's a right thing to do, but actually it's a better way to go, because you want to invest all your resources in your single child. I myself is a product of that. I got all the attentions and all the privileges as an urban single child, and which has an unintended effect lasting long to now, which is every family believes that it's strategic and wise to invest intensively in your children by sending them to expensive extracurricular activities, expensive piano, violin, classes. That really raised the cost of raising a single one. That makes affording three impossible. And the last thing I want to mention is that through that unintended consequences, women also have this ideas instilled in their mind. That is, being the only woman in my family is a great thing. I carry both the expectations of a boy and a girl from my family, and they self-empowered to the point that now women do not want to get into marriage or have a baby so that they can focus on their career, which I think is an unintended consequence, but in a good way.
Victor, go ahead.
Well, I think the gender imbalance in China now doesn't really quite help things. If I'm not wrong, there are a lot more men than there are women. So
17 million more, I believe, Victor.
Yeah. So this is going forward. I think this is one of the biggest challenges that they face. But having said that, when the government announced the policy, I thought it was timely. It's timely because, I'm a political scientist, so I look closely at what the states do. And to be honest, what the Chinese are doing now, Chinese government, it doesn't really matter what they do. It's probably covered negatively in the Western press. It doesn't matter whether it's demographic policy or economic policy. But the very fact of the matter is that in East Asia, I think all the governments, and in Singapore as well, the governments are more interventionist than they are in the West. So at this point in time, I think most people say, well, it's a little too late. Too little, too late. But I think it's better late than never, because the projected negative consequences associated with this aging population is actually potentially very serious.
What's the worst that can happen, Victor?
Well, I don't know. It really depends on how this thing plays out. But at the rate things are going, it's looking likely that the Chinese people won't be producing enough for themselves. So if we want to look at what happened, we just have to look at what's happening in South Korea.
So
what's
Victor,
happening in Japan.
let's split it out.
Yes.
Are you talking about human resources? Like, you have to have babies in order to have workers? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
so then China will not have workers in, 30 years' time, 40 years' time?
Well, I think they will face a big problem in terms of getting enough workforce, but they will also. But remember, the workers are also consumers, and consumers are also at the same time taxpayers. So if going forward, if you have a big aging population, and if China, by its own definition, is a socialist country, so you will have problems in terms of collecting enough tax to fund the social programs.
It's basically an economic disaster waiting to happen. I have some YouTube questions for you, guests. I'm going to get you for an instant answer, not a long answer, but an instant one. So this is Hobo Squid Hobo. Nice handle. More workplace discrimination for women will naturally follow, sadly. Yay, agree, disagree, thoughts?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, this YouTuber is expecting that there will be more workplace discrimination for women.
It's a yes and no question. So for the three-child policy, when it's introduced, it's called a three-child policy and related policy measures. And one of the key measure is to address workplace-based discrimination. So we can expect certain changes.
My answer would be, sorry, I have to maybe disagree a little bit, would be definitely yes, more discriminations, because I don't see in anytime soon those measures, corresponding measures will be implemented soon, because China hasn't really addressed its ongoing sexual harassment in the workplace and labor market discrimination based on gender yet. So I cannot imagine anytime soon that will be addressed. And if you look at Korea and Japan, women there face this problem in their life course. There's a U curve. They join the labor market before marriage, and having children, spend 10 or 20 years being a homemaker, and then return to the workplace. And if that's what's going to happen next to China, I think that's the blatant gender discrimination.
I want to bring in Yaqi Wang. Yaqi Wang is a China researcher for Human Rights Watch. Have a listen to her point, and then we'll discuss it.
If the Chinese government really wants Chinese people to have more children, it has to commit to spend the money so parenting becomes feasible and affordable. That would include free childcare and education, easy access to housing, to healthcare. Also, the government needs to enforce anti-gender discrimination laws in the workplace so women in China can have children at the same time have a fulfilling career.
Everyone's nodding.
I completely agree with. I interviewed 82 women born in the 1980s, the first generation of one-child policy, and they share with me a lot of stories about workplace-based misogynist practices, from pregnancy queue, which means you have to have permission from your employer to get pregnant, and then to pregnancy, child rearing related discrimination is called a diminished capability, the capacities called baby brains. The employers use pregnancy and child rearing to take responsibility from women and to start align their promotions. So women feel this kind of motherhood penalties, not just financial terms, and it also translated into opportunity cost.
Richard, it's very obvious in this conversation that we keep talking about women, but it's not women by themselves who are making these babies, right? It's possible, but they're not doing it by themselves. I wonder if one of the challenges might be the three-child policy and the two-child policy and the child policy, it's about whether you are a family and if you are married. What if that restriction was lifted? Do you think people would be more enthusiastic?
Well, I was making a joke with one of my friends. I said, I told my friends that if they remove the word married from the legislation, there's a chance that this might actually work better. I'm not saying it's going to be a phenomenal success.
What are you saying demographically then, Victor?
Yeah,
I see some subtext.
Well, then again, I might be accused of chauvinism and whatnot. So it's not a direction that it's not something that I'm comfortable discussing in public. But having said that, I think what the lady in the clip just now said is actually true. And I've been thinking along the lines of what she's been saying. One of the things that I think the Chinese government could actually do is actually to put in a more robust legal framework to protect the rights of women. I worked in the United Kingdom for about 10 years in London. And one of the things I noticed is that my female colleagues, they go on maternity leave for quite a period. It's not a short period. I think it was around 4 or 6 months, something like that. And I was really surprised because back home we don't actually accord this kind of privilege to the to the ladies who go on maternity leave. I think it's just 1 or 2 months. So I was very, very impressed. The second thing that the Chinese government could actually consider is perhaps to tackle the fundamental issue to do with this, and that is the cost of living. If the demographic policy could be in some way linked to the cost of living adjustments, I think it would be more successful if the Chinese government could actually link it to, say, the housing policy. So if you have more than 3 children, perhaps you can actually have some sort of subsidy towards your mortgage or towards the kind of housing that is being made available to you. I think this might actually see the government might actually see some success if this is actually linked.
So one more.
I don't think I would agree with your point. So I think this is exactly the wrong direction for building an inclusive and gender egalitarian society. China is at the crossroad to become to be a caring country instead of just pushing people to work harder. And this is a golden opportunity to invest in childcare, old age care, to invest in care infrastructures rather than repurpose the old one-child policy setup, which means pay and punishment. Using financial incentives to pay people to have more babies and punish those who don't. I think instead of having
would agree with each other.
individualized
we don't disagree.
kind of I think it's more important to change childcare as public good, rather than using money to incentivize individual family to have more children. I think that's a really wrong direction.
We do not actually disagree. I think we are talking about the carrots. I agree totally with you that the Chinese government should make things more inclusive for everybody. And I think that's my point. If you alleviate the economic suffering associated with having more children, people will have less consideration to have a bigger family. That's what I'm saying. I have my friends around me. They all complain about how expensive it is. Most of the time, they would acknowledge if they can make enough, they would like to have 2 or 3. And ultimately, the conversation revolves around how much money you make and whether they can afford to give the children. So if they can afford to send the first kid, say, to Oxford, they want to be able to send the second kid to Cambridge.
Yikes. If you I want them to adopt me. That's a lot of money right there.
Mindset. So, why do we need to send children to Oxford? Why can't we just send children, to let them thrive, to appreciate their own talents?
Yi, do you have children? Yi, do you have children?
Yes.
You have children?
I have a 20-year-old toddler.
And you don't want your child to go to the most amazing university allegedly in the world?
What? I want him to be a chef.
That's very practical. All right, so
very practical.
Ika, I think it was 5-6 years ago. You were on the stream. This is a one-sentence answer from you. You were on the stream, and we asked you, will the 2-child policy work? He's like, no, it's not going to work. Will the 3-child policy work?
No, because I think before the government steadily investing in care infrastructure, especially focus on those non-market solutions like public spending. Because I also agree with Ye that I think a market solution like giving individual families more money is less effective than the government investing in care infrastructures and give generous maternity leave, actually parental leave, not maternity. Like the Nordic countries like Sweden I visited before, they asked both the father and the mother to take the advantage. If the father don't use this opportunity, it will expire. That's a really great way, a conscious way of promoting that gender parity. Yeah.
Thank you. Yay, thank you. Victor, thank you so much for talking about China's new 3-child policy. Appreciate you. Thank you for your YouTube comments and questions. I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.